It's not calling you Josh Frydenberg, it's calling you Dosh Frydenberg.
Under the Coalition, taxes for hard-working Australians will always be lower.
You know, I don't hold a hose, mate, and I don't sit in the control room.
They're answers that only can come from Victoria, I'm afraid, because that's not my job.
But I ain't spending any time, though, because in the meantime, every 3 months, a person was torn to pieces by a crocodile in North Queensland.
Well, g'day listeners, and welcome once again to the Two Jacks. We've had a little sojourn for a week. We had a conditional release program interview with the wonderful Beck Rogers that I wanted clear air with, but now the Two Jacks are back. And joining me as usual is Hong Kong Jack. G'day, mate. How are you?
Pretty good.
How's things in Hong Kong? You're batching it again?
I am. And we had a proper T10 over the weekend. That's a typhoon warning 10, as high as it goes. And the city was very, very quiet on the Sunday.
A few shakes. What happened with the storm? A few shakes in the building.
Look, it was. We had a big one a few years back that was, you know, I wasn't exactly wearing the brown corduroys, but I was trying to remember what drawer they were in, you know. It wasn't quite as bad as that.
When I don't know, what floor are you on?
On the 8th, so that's
okay. That's not too bad. But if it starts shaking, it's still a little bit scary.
Yeah, no, all that day, the really bad one, I've got mates lived on the 22nd and the 28th floor of various flats, and they were in constant contact because they couldn't get doors to close or stay open or anything. You know,
I remember that there were great panes of glass falling from. I remember that storm actually.
Yes,
Great
it was a ripper.
Of glass falling from buildings and what have you, and quite frightening. Well, you've survived that one. A mate of mine who's also in Hong Kong, he was out sailing. Would have been a couple of weeks ago, and they had, I think it was a T5 warning.
Yeah,
and he decided, he's a large human being, so he decided he was going to sort of wait it out on the boat, and nothing much happened. So he got away with it. But in Australian news, Jack, we have a news poll. Probably the first one, I think it is the first one conducted since the last federal election. And it's not good news for the coalition. It's now 57-43, Labor's way. And the coalition's vote is at 29%. It was at 31.8 at the last election. Pretty much a third of that vote since the election has gone to Labor, with around 2/3 going to One Nation. And of course, we've got the new Parliament sitting today on this is the 22nd of July, 2025. We'll get to Tasmania, where the Libs have had a little bit of a success, perhaps, but things aren't looking good for the Liberal Party around mainland Australia, Jack.
Well, federally, they're not looking good, and that's because a couple of things are working together. They've got low electoral appeal. They've got a dysfunctional party structure, at least in the two biggest states, in Victoria and New South Wales.
I would argue South Australia as well.
Yeah, quite possibly. That's less important, but the two big states are very important. And they haven't got a dominant figure in the party, a strong figure in the party. Whatever you think about Peter Dutton, at least he was a strong figure they could sort of gather around, and they haven't got that, and nor do they seem to have much backup intellectual heft from the various. There seems to be no shortage of think tanks, etc., but there's not much coming out of them. So that's a kind of a dangerous combination for a party in terms of its future. Now, I mean, parties are not guaranteed to last forever. And you know that I would say that puts them at risk.
Well, I know the ABC is looking at is going to do a documentary on the Victorian Liberal Party, and I've been asked to come along to offer my opinions. What's happened there is very similar to South Australia, but different in New South Wales, and of course Queensland. The Libs are, I guess, the minor coalition partner. But what's happened in Victoria and to a degree in South Australia is that the sort of religious right has taken over, or to some large degree. There's been a lot of branch stacking. I mean, this happens in Labor as well. Been a lot of branch stacking, bringing people into the party that are so far away from mainstream thought that they sort of, become unelectable. In our last show, we looked at some of the polling around Victoria, where you've got a government who's clearly at the end of their rope, but they're still electable because the opposition is so poor, so poorly perceived, and a long way from the mainstream. Susan Lay's enjoyed some. She was on 60 Minutes, I think, last weekend. A bit of a profile, bit of a magazine type study of her there. She's in the Australian today, saying that she was willing to cooperate with the government, but she would make a stand whenever it was necessary. I get the feeling that she's being hunted at the moment from within the party. She is perhaps not a moderate, but she is not satisfying some of the sort of big C conservative faction within the party. And look, I guess it was a little bit similar to Dutton's leadership at the end of the previous federal election, where you thought, well, he may not make it. He did, in fact, make it all the way to the election. It didn't do him any good, and it didn't do his party any good. But you just wonder if how long she's got in that job before the wolves start howling.
She was described to me by a Liberal as a bit squishy, which
I gather that means she's a bit all over the shop ideologically, and in terms of policy.
Yeah, that's right. The whole thing with branch stacking has been going on since Noah was a boy, but it's easier to have an effect now in 2025 than it was 30 or 40 years ago, and that's because the party numbers have decreased markedly. So you pull 1,000 people in through 2 or 3 branches now, and you can really have some impact. Whereas in days gone past, that would give you some influence, but no real impact.
I mean, look, both major parties, their membership runs around 2% of adult Australia, the adult Australian population. The Liberal numbers in Victoria, just because I looked at them recently, are very, very low in some of their sort of key branches. Where their branches might have had 500 members, they're down to 300 now, or sort of halved. And that's in the wake of the branch stacking stuff that took place 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, grim times for the Liberal Party. What we're seeing is a little bit of vote going to One Nation, a little bit going to Labor, but the majority of it going to One Nation. And for those people out there who might be left of centre, I mean, who would you prefer, the Liberal Party or One Nation?
Yeah,
it's not good for our democracy that we have a weak opposition in general terms, but it also means that if the Liberal Party does disintegrate, it won't disappear, but if it has very small parliamentary numbers federally, then something else will fill that vacuum, and it might be a lot worse than the Liberal Party.
Yeah, always be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
The last time a party did disintegrate, a major party in the federal sphere did disintegrate, was the United Australia Party.
Yeah,
and within 4 years, we had the Liberal Party, and they governed as a one-party state really for the next 23 years.
Yeah. And the UAP disintegrated because it was trying to be all things to all people, wasn't it? It was a little bit left and a little bit right, and had former members of the Labor Party in it, had Conservatives in it, and it was never really going to. That was too broad a church to survive.
It never really had a party structure much to speak of either. So,
Yeah. So that's the lesson, isn't it? That major parties can disintegrate, but then
rarely.
but yeah, it has happened. Look, it probably happened almost regularly in the years pre-war that the Conservative or large L Liberal parties of Australia disintegrated and formed in other ways. But yes, as Jack says, be careful what you wish for. We wish Susan Ley all the luck in the world, but I don't think she's. Well, I think she's going to need it, and I don't think it'll be enough.
And to be fair, the 1955 split in the Labor Party cemented that one-party government for the Liberal Party. I mean, the Labor Party didn't disintegrate, but it chopped off.
It got very close.
It chopped off a leg, and hobbled round for the next 20 years. So,
well, there is some good news for the Liberal Party, Jack. Limited, you would say, but in Tasmania might be the mainstay of liberalism in Australia. There was the state election under the Hare-Clark system in Tasmania over the weekend. The Libs got 40% of the vote. Gee, that'd be making a few in Canberra a bit wistful, because that's where they kind of need to be federally. They got 40% of the vote. Labor very, very low at 26%. The Greens 14%, and others, a mad collection of left and right, got 20%. So as that stands, it'll probably be, well, it's as it is at the moment with 3 in doubt. Libs 14, Labor 9, Greens 5. Will be 4 independents essentially, with the 3 in doubt, as I say. Bridget Archer has gone from the federal to the state sphere. She was elected. Peter George, the former ABC journalist, he's been elected as an independent. Labor's likely to get 10, Greens 6, Libs 15 or 16. So it's more stalemate on the numbers. On the numbers, it's more stalemate. And I think what Tasmanians are saying is we have this system. It's not going to deliver majorities very often, and we would like our parliamentarians to cooperate and get stuff done.
Yeah, I mean, the almost inevitable outcome of this is that Labor won't be able to stitch together a majority to form government. And the Liberal leader, as the sitting Premier, will go to the Governor and advise her to commission him to form a government, and she will do that, and he will govern in a minority.
And we'll see how we go. We might be back here before the end of the year talking about Tasmanian elections. I hope not. And I think
there are limitations. I think there are. I'm not sure whether there's statutory limitations on that, but certainly there are political limitations on that. You can't just keep going to the people, or they'll. I mean, one of the reasons Labor's vote was down was that they brought this election on.
Yeah. And look, they ran a terrible campaign, but essentially, I think the people of Tasmania have punished them for dragging them back to the polls.
Yes, indeed. So where does that leave the stadium?
I think in reasonable shape. We did, of course, see a game at Launceston on the weekend, Jack. Hawthorn, who did they play? I mean, it was hard to make them out. It was that windy and wet.
Port Adelaide they played.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It was. I felt cold just watching it. It was awful. So having a. I'm not endorsing the stadium and its location. I think there are issues around that location, particularly around getting people in and out of a fairly large stadium. It's not a 50,000 seat. I think it's 25, is it, Jack?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, but they do need a roof stadium. Otherwise, you're going to have games like this, the one we saw at Launceston on the weekend, that dead set look like park footy.
I was watching it, and it took me straight back to Kilmore in the early 1970s.
I was not a Kilmore or not Assumption boy, but I did play a few early games there in the juniors, and it was cold. You often play in fog that you couldn't see 30 metres ahead of you.
Yeah.
and cold, really cold. Kilmore gets very, very cold. Well, look, we'll see how the Tasmanian political scenario goes. I guess what it is it's a mirror image in reverse of where Australian politics is at the moment.
Yes.
With the Libs on 40 and Labor 26.
And they will muddle along okay, is my view.
Well, they have to now.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't pull no confidence motions again and then go to the governor again.
No.
They just have to. They have to sit down and sort it out, and that's essentially what politics is. As I say, the new Parliament sits today. The new federal Parliament sits as of today. And the first item on the agenda, according to our Prime Minister, is student debt. The Albanese government has chosen their first winners. This is from news.com.au. First winners in the new Parliament as it promises to shave 20% off all student debt in its first sitting week. It will target loans, including help debt, vet loans and apprenticeship loans. According to calculations from the government, someone with the average help debt of $27,600 will have $5,520 wiped from their outstanding loans. People at the upper end of debt exceeding $60,000 could see a reduction of more than $12,000. The legislation, if it passes, and it will also raise the minimum repayment threshold from $54,000 to $67,000, meaning low-income earners will not have to start paying back their debt. Good politics, Jack, yes?
I've always had my doubts about this because no debts are raised. All the debt is done is it's transferred from the individual to the state, to the taxpayer. And it's a relatively modest number of people. But the opposition seemed incapable of making that argument. So perhaps it is good politics and I'm missing something, but I don't think it is good politics.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. And we had this discussion of when Biden attempted to reduce student debt in the US. The difference here, Jack, is that we have got Typh debt, we've got apprenticeship debt as well. So it's not selective. I mean, you are talking about, I would suggest somewhere about 85% of young Australians either going to university, either going to Typh, or some form of training outside of that, which they will incur a debt. So you're not doing it selectively, really, across the board, according to perhaps some elites who are doing university studies. So that's the difference there. Of course, someone has to pay for it, though, as you say, and that will be coming off joining Commonwealth debt, Jack.
It will.
All right. The one and only Mark Latham has been in the news in the last week or so. The Australian broke the story that his former partner, Natalie Matthews, had filed for a domestic violence order against him. In her application, she accused Mr. Latham of a sustained pattern of abuse, also claiming he coerced her into degrading sexual acts. Mr. Latham has emphatically denied the allegations, labelling them absolute rubbish, and has accused the media of taking a perverted interest in his sex life. Mate, let me just tell you, Lato, I'm not going to get into the allegations at all. We have no desire to have any interest in your sex life at all, you dirty old man.
Apart from the fact that it's been very entertaining.
It has been very entertaining. There are some rather odd allegations there, and we will leave that to the courts to sort out. In the meantime, Jack, if one wanders into the Labor Party room, the caucus room, one can see all of Labor's leaders in portrait photograph lining the wall there, and of course Mark Latham is there. And there was some discussion that he be removed from there, but now in a I guess what is a compromise decision that can really only come from the Labor Party, they're going to put a plaque on his photo that's saying he was expelled and we're no longer he's no longer on our Christmas card list. Rather funny too, isn't it?
Yeah, I did see that the Prime Minister has jumped out and said that not only does he not like Mark Latham now, but when Mark Latham stood for the federal leadership against Kim Beazley, that the Prime Minister was saying, I was proudly saying I was organising the numbers for Kim Beazley, so I wasn't pro-Latham even then, right? No,
Yeah, well, Kim bookended Mark Latham's.
he did.
He well, did it go Crean then Beazley? I'm not quite sure, but yes, it was Beazley, Latham, and Latham did have this great rise through the Labor Party, and for a while there, Labor looked like they were going to win the 2004 election, and then it got into the campaign, and I've read significant amounts about the 2004 campaign. Labor were absolutely dreadful under Latham's leadership. Do you remember Medicare Gold, Jack?
I do. And the other thing was that people got a good look at Mark Latham and didn't like what they saw.
Well, that was the handshake, really, wasn't it?
Yeah. But you go back through Mark Latham's history, he's one of the bad things that Gough Whitlam foisted on the party, because he started out as a young man working for Gough, and Gough used to wander around introducing him to grandees of the Labor Party. As you meet Mark Latham, who's working for me, he's going to be a future Labor Prime Minister. And sadly, a few people believed that.
Having met the fellow and having a long conversation with him, I can tell you that he is incredibly intelligent. He has a sort of encyclopedic mind. We were talking horse racing, and his ability to recall events, trivial events in horse racing with this sort of photographic memory was quite impressive to me. But having said that, our first meeting, the time we first exchanged words was I guess, a bit unpleasant. He had a go at me from earshot. I had to go back at him. And then I think one of my colleagues at the Australian got stuck in between us, and we ended up having a beer together. But it was sort of this. His MO is just to bully someone whenever he meets them. Yes. And that's essentially what he tried to do with me. But I'm from Reservoir, mate, so I've dealt with bigger bullies than him, and so we end up sort of being sort of separated a bit, and then peace reigned after that. He is a sort of odd fellow, but extremely intelligent. Yes. The simple fact of the matter is he will be in the New South Wales Parliament upper house for the next 6 years. I think it's 6 years, might be 5. He's elected for 8-year terms in the upper house in New South Wales. So he'll be there for a while. He's got to pay out one of his parliamentary colleagues for defaming him, and he's got to pay damages and costs there. So that'll keep him off the punt, or maybe put him on it a little bit more. But as for the photographs, well, you can't change history.
Nor should you try to.
And Billy Hughes is up there, Jack. Billy Hughes had more parties than Paris Hilton. And
in fact, he was asked in Parliament, Billy Hughes, that it was pointed out to him in Parliament in his later years that he'd been in every party except for the Country Party.
Yeah,
as the Nationals were known in those days.
Well, set up a few of his own.
And his response to that was, everybody's got to have a line somewhere, some principle.
Billy Hughes, I always thought of him as having sort of dipped into the Labor Party at a fairly early age. I always thought of him as a bit of a rat. But he's actually a really impressive person when you find out a little bit more of a trade unionist background. He was, in fact, a member of the New South Wales Parliament and the Australian Federal Parliament at the same time. when Federation came about. He was a member of New South Wales Parliament, remained there for 6 months while the Australian Federal Parliament sat in Melbourne. We should do a little bit of a show on Billy one day. His speeches were extraordinary, but my favourite story about him is when he joined the Federal Parliament. He walked up Burke Street to what is now the Victorian Parliament, but they'd all been moved across to the exhibition buildings while the Federal Parliament sat in Melbourne, and there was a big crowd of people. It was a big event. It was it was the first sitting of the Australian Federal Parliament, 1901. And big crowd around the place, and Billy Hughes, who was rather ordinary looking, shuffled up the stairs there, and a copper grabbed him and said, "Don't you? You're not going in here." He said, "Sir, I am a member of," I think he was a member for Redfern, but I may be wrong about that. "Sir, I'm a member," and he goes, "All right, get around the back." He wasn't allowed to go up through the front, was Billy. But one of the great things he did, of course, was when the League of Nations sat around, mulled over the Treaty of Versailles and what was to happen with German territories, the League of Nations, without Billy Hughes' intervention, would have given the German part of Papua New Guinea to Japan. Billy said, "Oh, no, not in my watch." And it took a lot of diplomacy for that to be turned around. A life, and his speeches are extraordinary, and he had a great gift of humour in his writing. I've read some of his stuff. His story about the founding of Canberra is hilarious, and we'll tell that story one day. Moving now on to the United Kingdom, Jack. 16-year-olds will be able to vote in the next UK election. 16 and 17-year-olds indeed. So the pledge is, this is from the BBC, the pledge is part of a raft of measures being introduced through a new elections bill. Other changes including expanding forms of voter ID. The UK requires voter ID. We do not in this country. Voter ID will now include UK-issued bank cards, moving towards automatic voter registration and tightening rules on political donations, to protect against foreign influence. The minimum voting age is already 16 for local council elections in Scotland and Wales, and elections to the Senate and Scottish Parliament. Good thing or bad thing, Jack?
Not a good thing.
Oh, come on, you old fella. Come on. Why can't the kids have a go? Have you met your average voter?
I remember how stupid I was at 16 is the answer to that.
Well, it's voluntary, of course, in the UK.
Yeah, there was a very good cartoon in the London Telegraph. What's his name? Matt, who does the little. He's a bit like Tandberg, does the little square every day, right? And it's a father talking to his son, and the son's got a pint of beer and a cigarette in his hand, and the father's saying, You're too young to vote Reform, because this is the classic Nigel Farage stands with the pint of beer and the cigarette in his hand, and that I suspect is what's going to happen to Keir Starmer. He thinks this is really clever and that the 16-year-olds will vote for Labor, but I suspect they won't.
Oh, I don't know that they will or won't. It's not that. I mean, I don't mind 16-year-olds voting. We had the absurd situation going back in Australia, going back to the 60s, let's say, where the voting age was 21.
Yes.
And of course, men were being frog marched off to fight the war at 19, to fight the Vietnam War at 19 without any political representation, and you can stick that up your backside. That's a disgrace.
Yeah.
So I don't have a real problem with this.
Now we're going to have the situation where they can't get a tattoo, but they can vote.
Yes, that seems anomalous, but I gather that some of them will head down to the tattoo parlours anyway and sort themselves out there. I don't have a real problem with it. It's something that's routinely discussed in Australia. It would not require a referendum, Jack, I don't believe, to change that. Certainly,
no, it would not.
When we went from 21 to 18, I don't really have a problem with it. I just think, if 16, 17-year-olds are politically active, it can't be a bad thing. You would think on on the voting behaviour of 18, 19, 20-year-olds, they're probably, a lot of them are going to vote left of centre. They're going to vote Greens. They're going to vote that sort of way. I don't really have a problem with it. Maybe it'll engage kids a little bit more than they are at the moment. But we'll see how it all pans out, Jack. We've got a way to go before the next UK election. And the Scottish Parliament, of course, nothing's gone horribly wrong there with 16-year-olds voting there. So we'll see how it all goes. You mentioned reform, Jack. Reform, they've got some problems of their own at the moment. This is from the Financial Times. Reform UK dramatically split on Friday as the party removed the whip from one of its only 5 MPs. You've got 5 MPs in your blue and you're not going all that well. And said he had been reported to the police for alleged threats of physical violence against the party's chair. The row between Nigel Farage's populist right-wing party and MP Rupert Lowe has thrown reform into chaos, just as it is trying to cement its polling lead against the ruling Labor Party and main Conservative opposition. It's got a bit worse than that, Jack. There's Lowe, who's the MP for Great Yarmouth. There are all sorts of queries about police being involved and all this sort of stuff. Pretty messy.
Yeah, he's a very odd person, Rupert Lowe. It seems to be the season for withdrawing the whip. Starmer's withdrawn the whip from a raft of his MPs as well.
That's not good with a big representation. You need whips just to get around there. They used to call me old toe cutters, Yeah. Get people, get them in to vote and get them in to vote the right way. Yeah.
And if you've got a stonking great majority like Starmer has, withdrawing the whip from people is a confession of weakness rather than a show of strength.
It is, and you do, particularly with big majorities, you just can't have people running their own races, and that's what whips are about. They're the people who know where the MPs are at any given time, and they'll be into their offices and telling them there's a vote ahead, and this is how they'll be voting. At the same time, when you've got 5 MPs, as Reform does, in the Commons, a whip seems to be a little bit unnecessary, Jack.
Yes.
Lowe has claimed that Farage's leadership style was messianic. It's a nice word. It's kind of fitting. Is this how Reform dies, Jack? Is this how it, that they simply can't hold it all together? These massive egos and these policies that really foundationally are going to be destructive for the UK.
This is always possible with a new party like this, but the polling keeps holding up. At the moment, if you run the polling in individual seats, nearly half of the current cabinet would lose their seats.
Yeah, and you'd have to say that,
and lose their seats comfortably, I might add, right?
You'd have to say that just put Reform to one side for a moment. That Labor in the UK, pretty much architects of their own misfortune, and really have been extremely poor and weak, particularly at the top with some of their policy agenda, Jack. Walking away from stuff that they regarded was absolutely essential to the UK or to the governance of the country and all this sort of stuff. They've been extremely weak. And it's really hard to figure out why, other than their leadership is weak.
Yeah, the leadership is weak. Starmer's really a technocrat, not anything else. But yeah, you're right. There doesn't seem to be any plan or purpose to anything that they do. They seem to bend with the wind.
And that's why you need whips. That's why, Starmer might be this particular character, a technocrat, as you described. That may well be the case. So he needs toe cutters to work in his party to keep everyone together. And they can be brutal people like Bill Heffernan, for example, in the Liberal Party, Senator Bill Heffernan in the Liberal Party. he wasn't called the toe cutter. That predates, goes back to the Fraser era. Who was the toe cutter?
Reg Withers.
Reg Withers was the toe cutter. It's a beautiful, beautiful phrase, of course, because
and you know where the toe cutter comes from. At that time, there was a gang in Melbourne who used to
mainly Sydney, mate. Mainly Sydney.
Who used to prey on other criminals who had done something like a bank heist, and they would go and visit them. And if they didn't get their share, they'd take out the implement that's used to cut reinforcing steel.
Well, it wasn't just that. It was a New South Wales group. They were actually all merchant seamen.
Yeah.
The leader was an Irishman, Irish merchant seaman. They were under the control of a particularly unpleasant cop by the name of Fred Cray. And Cray would, whenever there was a robbery, would sool the toe cutters in the general direction. They used to do some horrendous things, like they'd cut off the tattoos of criminals and send the skin, the tattooed skin, back to their wives. I saw a crook.
It's easier to go to the laser people, really.
I think it wasn't just the toe cutting, but there was a crook. This was evidence he gave at the Chris Flannery coronial inquest. His name was Stephen Niddies. He was an armed robber and a member of the Painters and Dockers. And Niddies was heard to say he'd been involved in a very, very large armoured van robbery. I think it was a record at the time, the Hall. And they dragged him in. The toe cutters dragged him in, and he said, I thought, well, they're just going to whip off it's not as if they're just going to whip off a pinky toe and then let you go once you're told them, because once they'd taken that pinky toe off, that was pretty much you cooked. They weren't going to stop there. So, yes, it's a lovely phrase in Australian politics, the toe cutter, and of course, reference to toe cutter gang running around New South Wales and Victoria in the 70s. I believe the Irish, I can't remember his name, the Irish leader of the toe cutters, Jack. The story goes that he is sitting underneath the second runway at Mascot Airport, and finally someone caught up with him. All right, moving on from all of that. We're still in the UK, of course. This is a terrible story, Jack. This is from the BBC, thousands of Afghans have moved to the UK under a secret scheme which was set up after a British official inadvertently leaked their data, it can be revealed. In February 22, the personal details of nearly 19,000 people who had applied to move to the UK after the Taliban seized power in Afghanistan were leaked. The previous government learned of the breach in August 2023 when some of the details appeared on Facebook. A new resettlement scheme for those on the leaked list was set up 9 months later and has seen 4,500 Afghans arrive in the UK so far. So these are people who are at real threat of at the hands of the Taliban.
Yeah, and the details included why they thought they were at risk. So not only have they arrived in the United Kingdom, they've arrived in the United Kingdom secretly, and indeed the government took out a super injunction. This is one of the injunctions that the court orders, not only that you can't report the details of what's happening, you can't even report that there is an injunction. So it's double super secret, if you like.
Yeah, well, it was set up in 2022. Labor has continued with the super injunction. But yes, 3 years later.
It was set up by the then Tory government, but has been continued by the Labor government since then. It's a really tricky situation. The breach is, unforgivable, and whoever, even if inadvertently caused the breach, that should be career ending. Don't care how senior you are, that should be it. But then once that's happened, what do? You kind of have to do something. You can't just tough this out.
Well, the Ministry of Defence believes 600 Afghan soldiers included in the league, plus 1,800 of their family members, are still in Afghanistan, Jack.
Yes.
So they have that old cliche, very uncertain futures. The secret scheme is officially called the Afghan relocation route. It's cost 400 million quid so far. It's expected to cost a further 400 million. Many of these are people who are at risk of the Taliban, and many of these people have assisted British and US forces, coalition forces, in Afghanistan, Jack. What do we know about the data breach? Was it a hack? Was it
No,
was it
was inadvertent.
failure of security? What do we know about it?
It was something that was left attached to an email.
Yeah, that's a sacking offence, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we're talking about department heads here. That should be a sacking offence. People will die, and may already have done so.
Almost certainly have, yes.
Yeah, and died horribly, it must be said too. So, yeah, really shocking story, that one, and we'll keep an eye on it and give you an update as we go. The Middle East, Jack, we have the Druze have been kind of set upon by fighters in Syria, leading to the deaths of 1,000 people in southern Syria. This is according to the Guardian. Local police told news agencies the area was calm now after Syria's Islamist-led government said Bedouin fighters had left the predominantly Druze city, but not without causing quite a bit of mayhem along the way. The London-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said Sweden had been, that's the area of the province in Syria, in southern Syria, had been experiencing a, and I quote, cautious calm since the early hours of Sunday morning, but warned of the deterioration of the humanitarian situation, including a severe shortage of basic medical supplies. And that same group reported on Sunday that more than 1,000 people had been killed in armed clashes, bombardment, extrajudicial executions and Israeli airstrikes since the violence in Sweden province began a week ago. The United Nations Migration Agency said the number of people displaced by the violence had risen to more than 128,000. Why did the Israeli government launch a strike into this particular area, Jack?
To protect the Druze.
So tell us who the Druze are. The Druze are a Christian militia?
No. They're people vary as to where they fit. They consider themselves to be a brand of Islam, but most of Islam doesn't agree with that.
Right.
And I think there are about 500,000 of them spread throughout. There's some in Israel, quite a lot in Lebanon, but mainly in Syria. They used to form part of the government of Lebanon. Lebanon was governed in a kind of a tripartite way, with responsibility split between the Christian majority, the Druze, and the Muslims.
It was the Druze militia sort of 800,000 followers in the Middle East, an Abrahamic, monotheistic, and syncretic religion. So yes,
and people have, even nice people will disagree about exactly where they fit in that Parthenon of the monotheistic Abrahamic religions, but my personal view is they're a kind of a Muslim, really.
Right. Well, an uneasy calm has fallen on southern Syria. Are we right to think that basically Syria, which was an absolute hellhole a year ago, has been something of a success story so far?
It's
with
been
an Islamist-led government.
It's been better than it was, and getting rid of the Assads is no bad thing, but it's a reminder that it's not going to turn into paradise anytime soon. There are a lot of bad actors, including in the government of Syria, and of course for the Israelis, they have a chunk of the Druze population in their own country who are loyal Israelis, but also loyal to the Druze cause. So for Israel, the choice is pretty clear. If the Druze need a hand and they can do it, they will get one.
Well, it's obvious, yes, because they did launch strikes in Damascus or a strike in Damascus against government forces, and
against the Ministry of Defence in Damascus.
This is more recent from the ABC. The Office of Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa announced an immediate ceasefire in Swada, which is the southern district of Syria, on Saturday local time, as Interior Ministry forces deployed in the Druze majority province under a US brokered deal with Israel. Messy, Jack. And on to Gaza now, of course, and we talk about messy. Well, that's nowhere near an adequate description of what's going on there. 28 countries, including Australia, have called for an end to war in Gaza, according to the Yemeni state news agency, and that has been welcomed by Hamas. In a press release, Hamas praised the statement's emphasis on allowing humanitarian aid into Gaza through the United Nations and humanitarian organisations, and its condemnation of the starvation policy pursued by the Israeli occupation, which it said constitutes a flagrant violation of international humanitarian law. Hamas noted that the condemnation of the killing of over 800 Palestinian civilians at aid distribution posts controlled by US-Israeli mechanisms underscores the brutality of this system. Where are we going? Where are we going here, Jack? It's got to end. It's got to end. And we pretty much every time there's food aid being handed out, there are just people being shot to pieces.
How do you want it to end?
Well, just stop the bloodshed. Just stop the fighting. Have a ceasefire, as shaky as it might be. Get some aid, get some medical support to Palestinians there. There are no hospitals in Gaza anymore. They're all gone. They're desperate for food and medical supplies. That should be basically the emphasis in terms of aid supplies from whoever it may be. I don't know, and I cannot say as to why there are these continual outbursts of violence whenever aid food is being distributed in Gaza. But really, the world is getting very, very tired of this.
If the cost is leaving Hamas in power?
I don't think there's much of Hamas left, Jack. I really don't think there's much of Hamas left. Look, I saw an interview, and this is somewhat of a diversion. I saw an interview with Ehud Barak last week, and Barak maintains that Israel under Netanyahu funded Hamas, that they provided funds to Qatar that they knew would end up in Hamas' hands. Now, what's going on there? If that's true, what's going on there?
No idea. This wouldn't be the first time that governments have ended up fighting someone they've funded to begin with. But that's it seems pretty grim. If that's the case, that's Barak's allegation. I've got no evidence to support it, but he maintains that Israeli money went into Qatar, knowing that it would fund Hamas and create, I guess, a circumstance where Israel would strike back into Gaza. All I say is, just from a humanitarian point of view, I have really no great love for Hamas, obviously, but really the killing needs to stop, and really we're at a point now where food aid, medical aid needs to get into the country and be distributed in a way that gets to people in a non-violent manner, and then we can start looking at what's going to happen in Gaza beyond that. It's a tough one, mate. It's a really tough one. But anyway, I thought the Houthis, changing the subject a little bit, I thought the Houthis had been destroyed, Jack. Didn't Pete Hegseth tell us that they were gone? No, the deal with the Houthis was that they wouldn't target American ships, so they've targeted 2 Greek-owned ships, I think.
They fly the 2 ships that they basically sunk with killing flew Liberian flags, which is obviously they were flags Greek, of convenience, but were operated by Greek firms.
Yeah, they were Greek-owned ships.
I thought they were saying that they wouldn't attack I thought the Houthis were saying that the only craft that they would attack were either American or Israeli.
No.
So that's obviously a big no
specific, as I recall it, the specific agreement was that they wouldn't attack American ships.
So they're attacking the Greeks. 4 of the 25 people aboard the Eternity Sea cargo ship were killed. Another 3 people were killed on the second craft. So, I mean, the strikes on Yemen and the Houthi positions in Yemen have clearly not been terribly effective, Jack.
Well, they haven't succeeded in wiping them out yet. That's true. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you saw any of the footage of the cargo ships being attacked, but whatever was hitting them was pretty substantial. And we're talking about surface to surface missiles with a lot of explosive ability. Something to watch
one doesn't know how much of that they've got left, because Iran was their supplier, and I don't think that will be happening very soon.
We'll see. We'll see about that. I mean, you'd have to wonder just how big an arms case they've got, as you sort of say. And the second thing is, have the Iranians stopped supplying? I mean, that might be a little bit of wishful thinking, Jack. All right.
Well, I think that can be taken care of.
On to the United States. Perfect flow there. The Epstein saga, Jack. It's quite an extraordinary thing, and it's really affected the Marga base. They're just not buying the fact that they could that they were going to release the client list, and that I'd fully indicate that the client list doesn't exist. But there's a whole raft of evidence in the Epstein files that is not being released, except for some grand jury testimony, which is of no value at all. It's a dumb move, Jack, from the Trump camp, and you have to wonder why. And it might well be that the president, as Elon Musk has said, the president's name runs throughout those files up to his association with Epstein up to about 2004, when I think they had a falling out over a property deal.
Yeah, they did. It was after that, I think he was barred from, sometime after that, he was barred from the club at Mar-a-Lago.
It wasn't done for moral grounds. It was, we've had a blue over a property deal, and that's why he's barred.
Yeah. I've got my doubts about much that's serious implicating Trump for this reason. I go back to 2008 when a hell of a lot of the American politics was ranting and raving about Barack Obama not being eligible for to stand for president because he was born outside the United States. And my response to that was, his opponent at the time was Hillary Clinton, and the Clinton machine was strong, vigorous, and ruthless. And if there were any evidence that that Barack Obama was not born in the United States, they would have found it and they would have done something with it. And I look at this and say, well, the Biden government had control of these files for 4 years, and they were prepared to do almost anything to stop Donald Trump getting reelected again. If they had something, they would have used it. If there was something really good, they would have used it.
Yeah, well, that is one of the arguments. I did, in fact, watch a clip from an old interview with Howard Stern. Donald Trump was interviewed by Howard Stern, one of the leading DJs in the United States, where perhaps he was joking, where he set the limit on the age of girls that he would have sex with at 12. That's Trump. That's Trump saying that. There is, and it's always difficult with AI around, but there is an abundance of photographs that show Epstein and Trump together. Elon Musk says he's named in the Epstein files, and so I don't know how he would know that, but given his Doge work early on, he may have come across this anecdotally or some sort of documentary evidence. The problem they've got, Jack, is that they promised they were going to release all of this stuff. And the Epstein files created, Trump's been very, very good about creating conspiracy theories. The QAnon stuff about, wide-ranging traffic of children, all nonsense, was largely sort of manipulated by the Trump camp for a very long time. And it created this belief that there was, pedophilia at an extraordinary range among the elites and the powerful in the United States. And Donald Trump was going to come in and put a stop to it all. Then we had the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, say, it's on my desk at the moment. Then we had Kash Patel, now the director of the FBI. He was interviewed on saying, yes, it's got to be released. Yes, it's got to be released. And then nothing, Jack. So what would be the reason? What would be the sensible reason for them not releasing it? Bondi has said, oh, well, there's hundreds of hours of child sex videos, of child sexual abuse material. Well, obviously you wouldn't release that. But there's got to be documentation. Basically, Epstein's house was raided, his New York house and his other properties around the country and in the Caribbean were raided in 2019. And the material was found there in his safes, etc. Where is it? Where is it? That's all people are saying. Where is it? And what does it say? I mean, I've seen Alan Dershowitz, who was actually at one stage named by Virginia Gifford. They were involved in litigation with Gifford, alleging that Dershowitz, who was Epstein's lawyer, was a culprit. She withdrew that claim prior to her death. Dershowitz has said that he believes that there's not much in the Epstein files that would implicate Trump. And that may well be true, but the point is they said they were going to do it, and then wrapped in all these conspiracy theories, and then they don't. And that just creates a bigger conspiracy that they'll be unable to control.
And do you think this will have some sort of political effect?
Yeah, I think it might. I mean, I think there's, if the MAGA rustodons, the people that probably 20% of voters in total around America, if they split or stay at home in the midterms, what happens then? They need to resolve this. It may well be that Trump is named in years before and of no great note. But I don't understand why they're not releasing it. If it was supposed to be naming Democrats and powerful people, Bill Gates has been named.
Bill Clinton.
Yeah, well, Clinton, of course. Clinton's on the flight log, so's Trump, so's Bill Gates. So we know enough about this stuff. But they've gone through this theatre. There was a release in February from the Attorney General's Department where they had all these sort of cookers come around to the White House, and they were given these white folders. Do you remember that?
Yes, and they all held them up for the camera.
And then they looked inside them,
There's nothing.
It had been pretty much what had been released before during the Biden administration.
Yes.
In fact, some of the stuff that had been released was subsequently redacted, and I guess that comes down to whichever lawyer you want to listen to. Right now, there is no answer as to why this material has not been released.
Yeah,
with the exception of the grand jury testimony, which is not going to prove anything at all.
And Trump seems to me to be betting on this having little electoral effect. And at the moment, I saw the CNN polling, and since this issue arose, his support has actually gone up a couple of points, but it hasn't dropped away.
It's 56-44, and these things.
No. I mean, his support amongst Republicans is about 89%, and it's gone up from 87 or 86 to 89.
But there are other political consequences beyond that. Maybe I'll be harnessing independent voters, etc. His polling's not bad, not horrendous, not Biden type horrendous, but it's not great. He's sort of at 56-44 approve. Or disapprove to approve, so he's sort of about -12.
And as far as the midterms go, the last CNN report on support for congressional Democrats was 19%.
Yeah, look, the Democrats are really not geared up at the moment. They don't have a leader. They need to fix that. They've got all sorts of problems.
Can't raise money.
They've got all sorts of problems. And now Bondi's doing an investigation, or has set an investigator to look at Barack Obama's presidency. And I would suggest, if what you were saying around the Biden administration prosecuting Trump for a raft of things, if they went around trying to prosecute Barack Obama and his associates, political associates at the time, political appointees at the time, the same sort of fate will befall Trump. I don't think this story's going away. I don't think it will be allowed to go away essentially by the people who support Trump, because they were led to believe that this was all going to come crashing down. You had Alex Jones, you had Joe Rogan, you've had all of these big influencers to the MAGA brigade who said, this is big, this is huge, we are going to, Donald Trump is our saviour and Donald Trump is going to fix this. He's going to expose all these horrendous pedophiles, and then nothing.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see. So far as the investigation into Obama goes, I don't think it's ever a good idea for liberal democracies to get to a point where, when you lose the presidency or the prime ministership, the next thing that happened is that you're investigated and you and your people are charged with something that they find.
And that was your point around the Biden administration prosecution of Trump.
Yeah, it's always a bad idea, and it's still always a bad idea, even if it's this administration going after Barack Obama. It's still a bad idea.
Well, on True Social yesterday, Trump posted a sort of Brady Bunch collection of images of the Attorney General and various appointees in the Obama administration, with Obama there, all in their. He had his prison greys on, but everyone else had their prison oranges on. Now, if you ask me, that is let's deflect all of this so we don't have to deal with
Epstein. It's a sort of a look over here thing.
Look over here. And again, you go, why? And look, I've got no evidence to suggest that the president is a pedophile, but everyone's going to have to ask why. And of course, around America right now, there's graffiti going up saying President Trump is a pedophile, all this sort of stuff, and that they've got to deal with it. But if they're just going to let it go, it will basically smoulder and potentially erode their base and agitate enough independent voters to get to the polls during the midterms and beyond. We shall see. But it's not going away, I guarantee you this. Hugely funny story of a Coldplay concert. Jack, you'd be a Coldplay fan, wouldn't you, from way back? If you like your easy listening music.
I wouldn't recognise a Coldplay song if I heard one.
Look, they have got some huge hits, and if we played a few for you, go on, I know that one. But of course, they were in a concert. I'm not sure where the concert was. I've just seen the footage. Was it in the States?
Yeah, it was in the States.
In the States, might have even been in New York, and they do this bit with a jumbotron where they, sort of have the kiss. It's a little bit like the basketball and sometimes the baseball. They have the kiss cam, where couples will embrace on the screen. But when they cut across to Andy Byron and the woman he was with. Andy Byron being a CEO of, I forget the name of the company, Astronomer, yeah. It's an AI company. It was clear that the woman in his arms was not his partner, or it was a partner of choice just for the night. And it caused all sorts of problems once they realised they were on the Jumbotron.
Well, what went wrong from when they were on the Jumbotron is that they panicked. And he tried to duck down behind, she sort of tried to run away, and he tried to duck down behind the people in front of them.
Yeah.
If they just waved to the camera, no one would have thought anything of it. No one would have taken any notice of it.
They were in a fairly strong embrace at the time, arm in arm.
But no one would have. no one would have recognised them because this wasn't being recorded. No one would have recognised them. But because they were ducking and hiding, Chris Martin, the lead singer of Coldplay, pointed out, well, either they're having an affair or said out loud, either they're having an affair or something strange is going on. And that's what got them into trouble. So,
yes, it's been very funny. He's lost his job. He issued a statement apologising to his wife and family. What's happened with her? There's other issues with her, aren't there? She's
the head of HR. It's always the head of HR.
Dear.
The world was
sorry. Go. No,
the world was a better place when they were called the pay office.
Well, I'm just reminded of my very favourite line about Coldplay. It came from the wonderful character Super Hands in the Peep Show, where they're talking about creating a pub, and Jeremy says basically, well, this is what the people will want. He goes, you don't want to give the people what they want. People voted for the Nazis and listen to Coldplay, and that was people simply can't be trusted because they voted for the Nazis and listened to Coldplay.
Well, there have been all sorts of jokes. One of the first ones to appear is sort of a bit inevitable, but I still laughed at it, that someone was feeling very sorry for the wife that after many years of a successful marriage, she had discovered inadvertently that her husband liked Coldplay.
Yes, it's a bit of a shocker, isn't it? Of course, they were out here not so long back. In fact, my next door neighbours went along, and I asked the wife what she thought. She loved it, and the husband said it was too green, sort of. He thought it was all horrendously green politics. All right. Also in the entertainment business, Steve Colbert has been dismissed at CBS, and the Late Show that he hosted has been terminated rather abruptly, Jack. This probably wouldn't be making news on our program, other than to say it seems that there may well be some, perhaps not political interference, but some political kowtowing from CBS to the White House, Jack.
Yeah, there is some suggestions of that, but I had a little bit of a deep dive onto this. It was costing his program continues to run until May next year, right? So he's not being sacked immediately, which that doesn't quite fit with the political interference. But his program cost $100 million a year to make. It has 200 employees.
Yeah,
and it was losing, of the $100 million it cost to make, it was losing $40 million a year.
Losing $40 million a year. I mean, so you think, gee whiz, $100 million, that's a lot of money for television. It's actually not that much money. You're talking about 280 programs. Right? So if you look at this and say, all right, we dropped $40 million on 280 programs that go for an hour and a half, starting at about 10 o'clock around the nation, around the US. What are you going to replace it with, and what's that going to cost? So, well, you say, okay, well, let's drop $40 million. If you just for an hour and a half of programming, you can put on, reruns of Bewitched, and you'll still cost you money, and you won't get anyone watching you. So that's part of the problem. $100 million sounds like a lot. $20 million for a host sounds like a lot, but it's actually not that much. I do note too that Donald Trump on Truth Social also said good riddance to Colbert, and perhaps Jimmy Kimmel would be the next one to go. There is a sense that free-to-air television in the United States is dying, and around the world. And so, yes, I guess companies like CBS, who are supposed to be cashed up, are making these kinds of decisions, whether it had a political outcome for them or not. It's the same thing that's what's going on in our in our country, Jack, in Australia, we don't have these late night shows anymore because they are expensive. You've got to have a band. You've got to. I mean, you get away with not having one, I suppose. You've got to have a band. You do have, it's labour intensive. You got a writer's room with 12 people there. You'll have a whole host of staff that you need to have these shows. So we don't have them anymore in this country because they're just too expensive. So maybe this is part of a dying industry, Jack. Maybe
I just don't think the math
of a dying industry.
I don't think the maths of 200 people adds up, but there you go.
Oh yeah, but you look at there'll be people like, I mean, you've got floor staff. There'll be at least a dozen there. You'll have people in producers' rooms, in video switching rooms. There'll be a dozen people there. It doesn't take long. You've got costume. You've got. I mean, it's a big thing. If you put a large scale theatre production together, I guarantee you'll have near enough to 200 people.
I could see that
outside a cast.
Could see that with a theatre production.
What I'm saying is, I don't think these numbers are extraordinary, except to say this is a dying industry. Cable TV is dying.
Yes,
cable TV is dying because everyone's streaming.
Yeah,
and so at the bottom end of this,
very few people say, "Oh, I must get home because I want to watch so and so." Those days are gone.
Yeah, well, people are either recording or they'll stream it later.
Mm.
And so it's still all about content, right? So it's about what the sort of content that you want, and whether that comes to sort of live variety entertainment shows, I don't know, but they are by nature very expensive to run. I quite like Colbert. Jack, he's a quite. What would say, passionate Roman Catholic?
Yeah, he is. There's a very
quite
good
deep faith, actually.
There's a very good interview. I don't think he did well on this one because he was interviewing Ricky Gervais about Gervais' atheism, and the trouble with interviewing Ricky Gervais is that he's incredibly smart.
Well, he's just quick. I mean, I find his atheism stuff just tedious, to be honest. I just find that really awful. But he's
hard to argue against because he is quick.
Yeah. All right. Yes. Possibly less of Ricky Gervais. I mean, just comedians generally telling us what we should think spiritually, I think is a bit much. All right.
Comedians telling us what we should think about anything is a bit much.
Well, no, they can certainly do that. I mean, when I think about some of the great comedians in the States and here, I think that's fine. But Gervais really goes out of his way to say, your beliefs are stupid, are inane, are irrational. And I find that really hard to take. I'm an atheist myself, by the way, but I don't like atheists, card-carrying atheists banging the drum. And he's one of the worst. Air India crash.
Do you think he veers into the Peter Fitzsimons end there?
No, what's this the sort of quasi scientist? What's his name? Rusted on atheist. He's another one. Yeah, it's just one of the. Atheism should not be a religion in its own right. That tells
I agree with that.
Other religions, or people who associate or affiliate with other religions, what to think and say. So, yeah, I find all that stuff a bit tiresome. But we must move on. Air India crash, Jack. I did not know this until I had a bit of a look. The Air India crash with the one sole survivor. Oh, no, this is another one. The Air India crash was pilot murder-suicide. It's looked at. That would make murder-suicide the probable cause of 781 deaths since 2014. The Air India crash I was citing there was the one with the sole survivor. And it would seem that it is not pilot error, but by a deliberate act by the pilot to crash the plane, kill himself, and pretty much everyone on board except for one.
This goes back further than 2014. If you go back to was it 1999? the Air Egypt flight
Yeah, that was in 1999, flight 990.
from New York to Cairo. Has all the hallmarks of a pilot murder-suicide. And this sort of struck me. If so many people are being killed by pilot murder-suicide, just what do we do about it?
Yeah, it's hard to see what preventative measures there would be. I presume that there are sort of counselling sessions available for pilots when they self-identify as having been living under stress or having particular issues in their lives that are causing depression or whatever it is. I presume those things are already in place. But I guess there would be difficulty about a pilot self-reporting because they won't fly and then they won't earn money. So, look, it's probably, we'd have to have a look, do a detailed sort of analysis of plane crashes due to, let's say, even pilot error or mechanical error, and there've been a reasonable number of those. But you mentioned the one, the Egypt Air flight in 1999. There was a Silk Air flight in 1997, both caused by deliberate pilot actions. Those two crashes combined killed 321 people. In 2015, German Wings co-pilot Andreas Lubitz locked his captain out of the cockpit and manoeuvred an Airbus A320 straight into the French Alps. We might all remember that one, killing all 150 people on board. More recently, China Eastern Flight 5735 in 2022 plummeted from a cruising altitude in what leaked data suggests was another intentional crash that killed 132 people. What I'm suggesting is, Jack, these things are getting to be more frequent than mechanical or pilot error.
Yes, yeah, and I'm not sure what we can do about it.
Yeah, I don't know that there are too many problems. I mean, look, you roll the dice every time you jump on a burner. When's the last time you were on a plane? Oh, you were away a little while ago, weren't you?
I did manage to fly as far as Bangkok and back very reluctantly. I don't like flying.
I don't mind flying.
That's because I'm the Greta Thunberg of Hong Kong. I'm
you
concerned
want to
about the environment.
You want to save all that carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, etc. All right, moving on to sport very briefly. The Lions tour, Jack. The Lions did very, very well in the first half, and the Wallabies came back to make it perhaps a little bit better than it was.
The score line was flattering. The Wallabies couldn't bend the line at all. They were well beaten. They're going to have to be a hell of a lot better in Melbourne.
Yeah, yes, that's true. And I did see some rather rough press from the Courier Mail, I think a sports commentator there, saying, we're all doomed, was very pessimistic about the Wallabies' chances for the rest of it. But here's something that caught my eye about the tour. The Nine's coverage of the first test recorded a total TV national reach of 1.78 million people, Jack. That's getting up to AFL Grand Final and State of Origin numbers.
It is. This is rugby's last throw at the dice. They've got to make a success of this to lead into the World Cup. I'm not saying they can't win in Melbourne. I'm saying they're going to have to be a lot better. Is the answer? But I believe Melbourne's nearly a sellout at the MCG. So that's it.
Yeah. So there's a huge amount of attention going. I felt very lonely watching Carlton Melbourne on Saturday night, and I knew the rugby was on, but I just had to watch the Blues.
Well, even in Hong Kong, my local was packed to the rafters with mainly British and Irish Lions fans.
Well, you've got. I mean, I did see a fantastic photo of a sea of red. Everyone sitting in their red jerseys with four blokes in Wallaby jerseys in the middle. So there's obviously a lot of tourism, and it's bringing a lot of money into the country.
Yeah. They. One of the things rugby gets right is it inadvertently understands scarcity. The Six Nations is, I think, one of the great sporting competitions in the world each year because you only play each team once. So there's a hell of a lot riding on every game. The Lions
Next test in Melbourne, is that Saturday?
Yeah, the Lions tour
At the
comes
G.
to Australia every 12 years. So
Yeah.
it's, so this actually builds something around it because it's not every week,
Yeah, well, my rugby mates have been jumping out of their skins, and the friends Australian friends in the UK are travelling back to watch and all this sort of stuff. AFL, I mentioned the Blues and the D's on the weekend. Carlton scraped home with an 8-point win. But the big issue rising out of that game was the Stephen May bump on Frankie Evans. Now, Frankie Evans is small forward. He'd be 75 kilos. Stephen May would be 6'3" or 4" and 110. They were both running for the ball. It looked to be an even contest. Frankie Evans just got there first. And then Stephen May laid a bump. I don't think it was he certainly didn't brace to bump, but Evans made contact, or May made contact with his shoulder on Frankie Evans and splattered his nose all over his face and lost a tooth out of it as well. It's gone straight to the tribunal, and it's causing a lot of conversation about how the tribunal is going to call this. It reminds me a lot of Jack Archer. Glenn Archer's son was rubbed out for 3 games and had to make a split-second decision and got it wrong, made contact with the body to the head, or the shoulder to the head. And I suspect Stephen May's will be similar. The problem I've got, and I think even Carlton players were talking about this, is that Stephen May had to make a decision probably. I mean, what the AFL would like him to do is stop and tackle Evans once Evans took possession. A coach would be very unhappy with that, by the way. But also, you've got so little time to make that decision. So what happens to Stephen May, Jack? Have you seen the incident?
Yeah, I have. He probably gets rubbed out for the very, very bad reason that with the AFL, everything depends upon the outcome. Nothing depends upon the intent anymore. Everything depends upon.
This is what I was getting to. So that the Archer one, I don't know if you've ever seen it. Glenn Archer's son Blake got rubbed out for 3 weeks. He could, again, a similar situation, could not have made, or would have really struggled to make a decision to pull back and perhaps tackle instead of making contact. And he got the 3 weeks. Well, he's a North Melbourne footballer of no great acclaim at this stage in his career, and that sort of went that way. But there was no intent. So why aren't we judging intent? So I saw an incident. I'm just trying to think it was where the intent was really severe. It might have been Tom Lynch for Richmond who threw a great big roundhouse right at a player, didn't cause much damage. Now, he got a few weeks for that, but there was intent to cause serious harm.
It was a good old-fashioned.
And I would say Stephen May did not have that intent.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it'll come down to, as you say, high contact, and what's the term they use for the outcome itself? It's high contact. Obviously the player little Frankie Evans was concussed.
Yeah. It's not just at the tribunal level. All over the shop are the AFL when it comes to imposing penalties. You give a bloke, that Collingwood supporter who made the poor joke to on a text message or on Twitter, I think, to Michael Voss. He got what did he get, 5 years or something?
5 years.
Yeah, 5 years.
I'm told, I don't know his identity, but I'm told he's a well-known businessman, and he's obviously quite embarrassed about this. It was just a shitty joke.
Yeah, and everyone who tells jokes know that they don't always land, right?
Yeah, and when you start talking about murder and stuff in jokes, you want to be absolutely sure
it's going to land.
Where you're going.
So he got a joke wrong, and he's not allowed to go to the footy for 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, like, just getting back to this, I think we need to understand intent. The other thing that you've got to think about here is what does the game expect Frankie Evans to do? Do they expect him to shirk? Because God bless the man, he just kept going. and he knew he was going to get poleaxed, but he went anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
So
and that's
so
what
that player must be protected.
That's what, and we laud that, the bloke who goes in even when he knows he's at risk. That's, we put a high price on that. We say that's terrific. We love that.
Yeah. I did see also, Jack, Collingwood and Freo. Freo had a great win at the G on the weekend, beat Collingwood by less than a goal, I think. And I did watch the last quarter, and I watched the last few minutes, and there were Collingwood. See, what Collingwood are behind, and they need to get a score. So they do not want a stoppage. They don't want stoppage after stoppage after stoppage. That will run down the clock. So I noticed that they were tackling and then letting the bloke go. Tackling, then letting the bloke go. Tackling, then letting the bloke go. So the ball will stay in play.
Hoping the ball will spill to one of them and they could get away with it.
Yeah. It was really interesting. It's obviously something they've trained to do.
Yeah. Do you know they've played in 34 since Craig McRae's been coach, 34 games where the result has been less than 2 goals, and they have won 25 of them.
Yeah, I mean, they've lost the last couple by a goal. So maybe, a lot of that does come down to luck too, and maybe just those, red or black is coming back to haunt them a little bit. They're going poorly at the wrong time. I mean, you wouldn't say they're going poorly. They're missing a few. I'm looking at Brisbane and seeing them just to be the standout side at this stage. And Adelaide Crows, they're not doing anything wrong at the moment either. Moving on, Jack, at the tennis at Wimbledon. By the way, I did see Latho was at Wimbledon. I think it was 2023 when he was first with Nathalie Meadows, or Matt Matthews, I should say.
Oh, okay.
And he was on a study trip to Europe, studying education systems in Europe. And there he was at Lord's and Wimbledon, Jack.
Okay.
I would love to see that report. Anyway, at Wimbledon now, Jack, the cheapest ticket you've written here, Jannik Sinner versus Carlos Alcaraz at Wimbledon, was selling for over $20,000.
This was on the secondary market for the men's final. They run these secondary markets on the net. The cheapest ticket for the final that day was $20,000.
Wow. That is a rich person's sport right there.
Yep.
I don't know what the main court attendance is, but it'd only be a few thousand, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It's not very big. But if you're getting that sort of price on a secondary market as a sport and as a tournament, you're doing a lot right.
Indeed. Now, we'll get to the Test cricket, but very, very quickly, Australia won the first T20 in the West Indies overnight, was yesterday. And Mitchell Owen got 50 off 27 balls on debut, 6 sixes. Mitchell Owen, for those who don't know, is made an unbelievable 100 in the BBL, and he's really a club cricketer. He's a club cricketer who's gone through Cricket Tasmania and now playing for Australia. So that's a wonderful effort from him too. I saw him getting the cap from his Tasmanian mate. But also, Jack, alarmingly, you've clocked Jofra Archer's one of his overs. Was it his first or 73rd?
73rd over.
73rd for the team, obviously, but and they run 92.7 miles per hour. 93.1 was the second deliver. 92.0 miles per hour the third. 90.4 the fourth. And he got a slower ball, this bloke. 91.9 and 91.4. He is. I saw his first over actually. In fact, I watched a fair bit of it in against India at Lord's, and he is letting him go at a furious rate.
You'd have to say that if they can keep him on the park, which is a big if,
with Mark Wood, who's probably quicker. He's probably as quick, if not a touch quicker.
If he's quick, if he's as quick as that at the Gabba in, is it the early December?
First test in Perth.
Perth, is it?
I've made this mistake. I think I made this mistake on the podcast. You always think the first one's going to be the Gabba, but the first one's in Perth.
But on Aussie wickets, if you're bowling that pace, it's going to be very, very hard.
At Perth. Keeper would be just standing in front of the side screen, mate.
Keeper will be
it is a bit alarming, isn't it? Their attack without those two is a bit pedestrian. Wokes is a good player. I mean, they're all handy bowlers, but there's not a lot of fire there.
Wokes is an England and only bowler.
Yeah, look, he'll toil away here. The wickets won't suit him. Maybe Perth, maybe the Gabba, but yeah, if you've got Mark Wood there and Jofra Archer, if they stay in good nick, look out. That's probably enough to swing victory England's way, I would think, particularly as we have a slightly shaky top order, Jack. But yeah, if you're bowling at those speeds, mate, just good luck. All right. Well, that takes us out for episode 120 on this 22nd of July 2025. I'd like to thank our listeners for tuning in and bearing with us as we had a bit of a week off last week. And just a bit of a reminder, very, very quickly, drop us a line. Let us know what you think. We got a bit of a criticism, and I actually did speak to this guy on Twitter. He wasn't terribly happy with our analysis of the Victorian Liberal Party going back a week ago, and I did mispronounce Pizzotto's name. And look, he had a view that's probably quite right, that the Liberals had perhaps chosen some fairly poor candidates as well. But yeah, look, all that sort of feedback we look forward to. You can drop it to us on Twitter or whatever you like, DM us, and we're more than happy to discuss it through the program. So do drop us a line if you've got anything you want us to raise or you want to launch a criticism. We've got thick skin here, Jack especially, because I'm getting into him all the time. and yeah, so we will not swerve any real ferocious criticism. So drop us a line. And that does take us out for episode 120 of the Two Jacks. We'll see you later, Jack.
Cheers.
See you, listeners. Bye.